and welcome. Here we are, myself with Tall Tree, and I'm the Bush Whisperer. Tall Tree he's a very interesting gentleman. He's been a part of our roundtable for a long time. He hasn't been with our roundtable in a little while. He's had a lot of responsibilities on his plate, but we've been doing this little show. He's been digging under the bonnet with me, and I think this is something that hopefully is going to just continue and develop into topical conversation because it seems to flow quite well. So I welcome Jeremy, and what an honor to have this conversation with you, Jeremy. You're such a lovely stand-up bloke, a father, a deep thinker, and somebody who's got his feet on the ground, which is always lovely to be connected.
I try. Good to be here again. And sorry if there's some noise in the background. I have a wild and creative toddler. This morning, she decided to paint her face with uh, with ink because we got her these stamps and these ink pads, and she was just like, "I'll just do this." Eh, eh. um, Yeah, I've been referring to this show as the life of a shaman and discovering what makes you tick. So uh, I think let's see. Last time we spoke, I think we stopped off. I remember you were telling me the story um, where I think you were this was in India, and you had gone into a village or a town or something like this, and you were trading hashish with the cops or something like that. The cops were worried that you didn't have enough hashish, so they were concerned about that and wanted to make sure you were stocked up. So I thought that was delightful. Completely opposite of what we experience here in America. Um, but yeah, what happened? Where'd you go after that? What'd you do next?
We went up. So that was Almora,
Hmm.
Almora in Uttarkashi, Uttaranchal. Then we went up to the northern parts of Almora. We went past the Lake District. I can't remember the names of the places. There's a place up there where there's 1,008 shivlings, which is lingams.
Okay.
And so we went up there
Hmm.
and spent some time up there. I'd also met another Babaji who was an Agora, part of the Agora Babas,
Hmm.
and had become quite closely connected with this Agora Baba. Spent a lot
Can
of
you,
time with him.
can you pause 1 second here? You said 1,008 lingams. That's
Yeah,
isn't that like a little temple, or it's like a little shrine to Shiva, right?
it is, but it's specifically a lingam is
It's like a phallic symbol,
it's a
right?
phallic erection
Okay. And
made out of
what?
rock.
How is that associated with Shiva?
Um, it represents the rising current of your kundalini
Hmm.
and that masculine power that is required for the discipline of the practice and the training. And I mean, there's a lot of allegories. There are allegories with Mount Kailash being the big lingam. And so these are all tuned into this, but it effectively represents on a deep subjective level the tree of life on one element. And it's that central vector which the totem is symbolic of. So a totem is effectively a shingam, a lingam, and it represents the um, the fundamental north pole of the universe, which is called the axis mundi. and the wheel of the heavens revolve around this. So having a shivling is by representing that axis mundi, which aligns your axis mundi, your shivling, your spine, with the proverbial spine of the world, and aligns you with true north, as it were, the metaphor of true north, which is, the center of the universe, the center of the world. The idea of this true north being the center of the world only really works on a flat earth, by the way. I know that's a bit concerning, but that is the way that
That's a
the
whole nother
idea.
conversation.
That's a whole other
I would
conversation.
be I would be totally happy to get into, but on a later show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that simple. That there is a shape of the earth. I think that there's a lot more to reality than that. I
Yeah.
think there's many different octaves of reality that we're experiencing simultaneously, and we become stuck in one aspect or another of reality, and we're not all necessarily living in the same reality. This is how dream time works.
Yeah, I think that to riff on that a little bit, uh I think we get stuck in a certain level of awareness. I think that the octaves, um the hues, the frequencies, um the multitude of that, consist and construct our our reality are alive and well and impacting us, moment to moment. But how aware we are of their fluctuations and their influences, I think can be uh, extremely limited, or we can not even be aware of them, just by the nature of our current, you know, our current era in humanity, and what we have to deal with here. Um,
And that's sort of,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Go ahead.
that's sort of what the axis mundi represents.
Yeah,
That channel, that doorway towards other worlds,
hmm.
the lokas, the heavens, the underworld. The
Yeah,
tree of life is another metaphor for the axis mundi.
yeah. Um, so with the stone lingam, is it is it like is it something that people go to and meditate on? Do they do they offer it things like, is it like a device to be used for a certain purpose? Like, what do you do with the the object?
Well, typically, I mean, it depends on where you are as to what people use it for. It can be used in a multitude of ways,
Yeah.
though. From a exoteric perspective, people exoterically use it to, you know, to express a connection with the axis mundi, and they connect with the axis mundi in whatever way that they feel they know how to or how they can. Usually, like you say, with offerings, incense, foods, sweet foods, milk sweets, milk rice, um, even money, and they do rituals of sorts. There are different rituals that one can do. Washing the lingam is symbolic of purifying the lingam, is symbolic of purifying your energy field. So, and obviously, contemplation of the lingam and meditation upon it is contemplating your energy field, because there is no real separation between the fundamental cosmic dream time and the personal layers of dream time that we experience as individuals in this collective dream time.
Now, from if I remember, the pictures I've seen of um, these structures, these lingams, um, it's there's a at the bottom of them it looks like they're almost it's almost as if they're coming out of something. There's like another circle around it, and reading about them, it was like there's a bit of there's like a duality there. It's like the what is it called, like the yoni, or the
That's what it's called.
female part, and then the
Yeah.
lingam is coming out of that, or
Yeah.
is that correct?
Yeah. And so that yoni represents the Shakti,
Hmm.
and the Shakti with the lingam emerging from the yoni or penetrating through the yoni represents Shiv Shakti. And the Shiv Shakti represents the powers of attainment. So if something happens that is supernatural because someone is in tune with a higher vibration, people will say, oh, that was Shiv Shakti.
Hmm.
And Shiv Shakti is when things happen that are inexplicable.
Hmm.
Like, if you if you get set on fire and you don't burn,
Yeah,
that'd be good.
that's been the running theme of this whole endeavor, is the Shiva Shakti aspect of
Yeah.
your experience. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you met an individual. Um. You called them. They're called Babas. Is that what you said?
Baba is a word for father,
Father.
which
You know,
means
that's
priest.
hilarious. That's really interesting because my daughter calls apples Baba. She goes, Baba. We're like, okay, yeah,
Mm.
apples. um,
That's cool.
and this gentleman was of the Agori. Can you tell
Agor,
us,
yeah.
a little bit about these? But because there's a lot of interesting things surrounding these people.
A lot of people are very afraid of the Agor,
Yeah.
because they work with Tantra. And so a lot of people are afraid of Agor. They'll do crazy stuff, man, like smoke um, cobra venom to see how close they can get to the other side. And they will stay by the guts where the bodies are being burnt and maybe adorn themselves in bones of people that have been cremated. And sometimes they might eat um, their guru's brains. They've been known to do all sorts of really intense, harsh. They are Kali Bhakta. Bhakta means to be bhakti is a practice of devotion. So to be a Kali Bhakta is to be devoted to Mahakali and the Shakti, but generally the Mahakali representation. So if you go to a Gora cave or an Agora ashram, little, hut, whatever, there's probably going to be Mahakali around, the energy of Mahakali, the worship of Mahakali, the symbolisms of Mahakali,
Okay.
which is sort of the dark aspect of the divine feminine. And when I say dark, I don't mean necessarily bad, because this is the thing: is people are afraid of the Agor, um, but the Agor are just they're seeking another path towards liberation, so that they're not actually necessarily bad guys. Though there are a lot of Agor that do black magic, so this is probably why many people are afraid of them.
So to go back to the Kali, what is Kali?
Imagine the triple goddess for a moment. So, I mean, we know the triple goddess is the three forms of Hecate in Europe, for example. It's probably more well known as Hecate in the US as well. And the triple goddess represents the three aspects of the divine feminine. And the three aspects of the divine feminine can be sort of considered as the youthful element of the feminine, the mature, abundant, rich, and able to produce babies. So we're talking about having potency, the queen aspect of the divine feminine. And then the old lady who has the wisdom. Her womb is barren. She's unable to perform the duties as a queen, but she is now the seer, and she has the wisdom of her life's experience. So it represents the wisdom of the divine feminine, the abundance and the potency of the divine feminine, and the purity of the divine feminine, right? And so the purity from a Shiva Bhakti perspective, because you've got three different nodes of in India. You've got the Vaishnu path, the Brahma path, and you've got the Shiva path. And the Shiva path is very much the path of the Holy Spirit, right? So if you imagine it in terms of Christian iconography, you would have people that would be devoted to following the Father. Then you would have people that would be devoted to following Christos, Christ. Then you would have people that would be devoted to Mother Mary. And so what Mother Mary would represent in that Trinity is what we're talking about here. But in the divine feminine Trinity, Mother Mary in the Christian ethos represents the Holy Spirit and the holy powers, which is why the angels are always around her. So in the Vedic iconography of the same aspect of consciousness that manifests through us and around us, the universe, the dream time, the Mahakali represents the let's just put it this way: Shakti represents the fertility of the divine feminine. Parvati represents the purity of the divine feminine. A Mahakali represents the crone. And so she represents that insane wisdom, the chaotic, the most chaotic aspect of the divine feminine, the one that people are normally afraid of.
I think I kind of am seeing into this a bit, um, because it seems like the Mahakali is the aspect that that definitely deals with the gateway of death, um, because it's not the spring, it's not the blossoming spring or the you know abundant autumn. It's the combination of both of those and the winter, and what comes with that. And it's interesting what you said, the insane wisdom, because I immediately thought about dancing, a dance, some sort of dance, um, because I always I thought, like, what what better way what better way to embrace the inevitability of death, um, but to dance with it and through it. So
Yeah, so obviously the Mahakali, there's a story about the Mahakali, right? When the Mahakali dances and goes into her wild dance, she will dance the universe out of existence. And the only way for her to be appeased is when Shiva prostrates himself and surrenders and allows her to dance on top of him. And then she comes to her senses.
hmm.
And that is that image of the Mahakali with all the skulls as a garland that you've probably seen. It's a disturbing image. And the, you know, crazy eyes with the tongue out, which is obviously representing there's a certain element of madness,
Hmm.
bloodlust.
Um,
Retribution.
yeah, uh, yeah. I don't get all of it. But so the Agor are called to, I guess you'd say, worship this.
They practice a form of devotion to Mahakali
Devotion.
because they are looking for absolute liberation from all of that matter,
Okay.
and so they want to. They're not looking for the easy, simple tasks. They are like, give me the most difficult, harshest thing. I want to go like, I want to start with the worst and get it out of the way. You know,
Hmm.
if that sort of is a good way of looking at it. So they're looking for the most direct route, the most dangerous. There's a mountain. You could walk up the path. It's going to take you a while because you're going to go circling around the mountain, but it's a cliff. It's going to be hard. It's going to be sweaty. You can climb the cliff. It's going to be quicker. You might fall and never make it, but you know, it's going to be
Hmm.
quicker. That's what we're talking about here.
So it sounds right up your alley, to be honest with you. Um, so how did you? What was the connection? How did you meet this individual, and how what was the connection there? What did you learn?
Just met him.
Okay.
I would travel around and meet Babajis, and people would say, "Oh, there's this Babaji there," and I'd
Hmm.
be okay. Where we can see him? Sit down
Yeah.
and meet him. Say, "Hey, how you
Hey,
doing?"
want some hash? Yeah.
and just sit and just contemplate and meditate and feel his vibrations and see. This guy was actually quite a lovely guy,
Yeah.
actually. Um, so if you can see through all the external stuff, you can see to the core of the being, the human being you're with. You can get a sense of like what they really are about. And yeah, so I just spent time getting getting close to this agor sensation because it was something that was out there, and serendipity brought it to my doorstep.
Mhm.
And because I was never drawn to, you know to that. I was drawn more to just, how can I say, I'm not going to sign on one dotted line.
Right.
I'm going to keep myself open to all possibilities and all potentials.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to like typecast myself as, okay, I'm this or I'm
Yeah.
that. Everybody typecast me as a Shivite, but that was just because I enjoyed the sound of Shiva mantras.
Hmm.
I just really felt at home with them. I was like, oh, this feels so homely. And some of the mantra from other sects and other were beautiful, but the Shiva, I found it put me straight into a trance, and then I would just find my way more easily, to traverse the spiritual, which is the core of what shamanism is. It's about shamanism. People don't understand what shamanism is. Um, to back up, you've got seven fundamental principles. So you've got seven principles of Hermes, the seven principles of the chakras. You've got these seven principles represented in the Kabbalah as well. And then you've got them represented everywhere else: music, tone, color, the seven fundamental planets, right? And these seven fundamental principles come from fundamentally three. And those three fundamental principles are essentially one principle manifesting itself through a proxy. And so, like, if you look at the Hermetic principles, it's probably the easiest way to consider it because the Hermetic principles are so fundamentally conceived. So they speak of the mental sphere, where there is a sphere of mental activity that is the basis of all things, and all things find their beginning in the mental field, the field of thought, and that there is a sphere of thought where all time, all space, all possibility exists as a possibility right now, but there is no changing, there is no division, there is nothing that can be removed from it or added to it. It is complete in itself. It is the monad. And this is the mental reality, the fundamental spiritual, what we can call the divine dream time. And in order for divine dream time to take root, it had to be able to express itself. And so the expression of itself came into being through the vibration, the sound. And so vibration is the third principle of Hermes. And the first principle of Hermes is thus that the universe is a reflection of mentalism. And this mentalism reflection can only come into being due to vibration, because vibration is the source of energy. But in order for vibration to happen, there had to be a field of correspondence, because the correspondence meant that there could be a quantum field of entanglement whereby that which is within this mental sphere of mentalism can project itself outside of the mentalism sphere without leaving. Hence, there can be no reduction. Hence, there can be no loss or addition. But what is within the mentalist sphere can project itself outside without leaving. And this is the reflection of the aether and the quantum entanglement field through the pranic field, as it's called in India. And so this reflection was only possible due to the second principle of correspondence. So these three make a sort of fundamental trinity, if you will. And then these three then get reflected once again, that the sphere of vibration, because there's vibration, there's movement. And because there's movement, the movement needs to reflect energy, because movement is the source of all energy and it's what energy produces. So as movement had now arisen, energy had arisen, and energy was reflected as polarity. For there's a movement from A to B to A to B to A to B. There's movement between A and B, which represents polarity. So, due to vibration, there was a reflection of polarity. And so, this polarity was then the binding form of vibration that gives a rise to energy. But this energy and the vibration was can be considered as swinging pendulums of polarity. And these swinging pendulums of vibration, because they are vibrating, there has to be rhythm, right? On, off, on, off, on, off. So because of the movement, because of the polarity, we automatically have rhythm. And rhythm is thus what governs the field of vibration and sort of aligns the energy between vibration and rhythm, because rhythm is an expression of vibration. And so that then becomes the fifth principle of Hermes. Now, shaman are devoted to this fifth principle of Hermes, rhythm. And rhythm is the fastest route to getting to the field of vibration. And vibration represents the word, Om, that word of God that created the universe. First, there was the word. Before light, there was the word. That word, that vibration, that fundamental rhythm of the universe is achieved by entering into a state of perfect rhythm. And so, hence the drum, hence the dance, hence rhythm being the key to fundamental practice of all shamanic techniques. Even if one is in a deep state of meditation and one is choosing one's heart as a drum, then one allows that drum to play and one focuses one's intentions and attention towards the rhythm of one's heart and listens to the heart drum play, if that makes sense. And one gets locked into the field of rhythm, which then is expressed by the rhythm of the breath, which is now polarizing that field of rhythm. The energy that is brought in to the heart is brought in by the breath, the energy. So this rhythm is then, because there is rhythm and there is this fundamental vibration, and the vibration has many different fields of vibration because multiplicity arises from all the divisions of the monad into the duad, into the various different subdivisions of all the different things we can experience. There are all these different harmonic vibrational pitches. For example, this crystal has a different vibrational pitch to this one, has different vibrational pitch to the bones in my body, or to my teeth, or my eyes, or my hair, or my skin. They all have a different resonant frequency. This is the nature of reality. And so all of these resonant frequencies have their own rhythms. And these rhythms are cascading and having effects upon each other, which then cause consequences, right? Like swinging pendulums, all in their own timing, that bump against other pendulums. And this bumping against these pendulums, we call this the effect of the cause. So cause and effect thus becomes what rhythm leaves us with. Because of all these different rhythms, there are all these proverbial accidents that produce reality as we know it. And so we live in a reality which is like a chain. A cause produces effect, produces a cause, produces effect, produces a cause. And so a butterfly flaps its wings in Beijing and you get a tornado in the USA. You know, this chain of causality is what we're talking about. And then this is the sixth principle, cause and effect. And then there is the reunification between the Shiva and the Shakti, which is the seventh principle of Hermes. So that then becomes the masculine and the feminine becoming merged into a single unity of creation. And that's what we live in, this single unified creation. However, the shaman, their focus is upon rhythm. And so um, that is really the core of what shamanism is. One's dedication is towards rhythm.
I had I once had the experience of drumming, and the rhythm of my drumming collapsing the illusion of um I don't know, these barriers dissolved. And I was having these moments of what do you call it, like knowing something's going to happen before it happens. uh, Specifically, I was drumming, and I knew that my daughter was with me, and I knew that she was going to do something right before she did it. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, brother, that's intense. That's actually very much to do with what the core of shamanism is about. Because the rhythms is related to Saturn on an occult level.
Hmm.
And Saturn has been considered as the lord of time, right? And rhythm is an expression of time. And when one is in tune with fundamental rhythm, one is in tune with fundamental time. So one is able to tune in to time and gain instincts and impulses of what will come or what has come.
Um, so to go back to your time with the Baba there, it sounds like it sounds like in India, it's it's pretty easy just to like to show up and just hang out, you know, with people or in a place. You're just like, oh, you're here
India,
now.
India is much more organic in a way
Yeah.
than a lot of other places. Um, I find that we've lost our Western culture has become polluted and
Mm-hmm.
convoluted, twisted and demented
Mm-hmm.
by fear of each other. And so we live hiding behind our alarm systems. Or if you're in South Africa, most people have electric gates,
Yeah.
electric fences, and locked doors. And, you know, now we have to protect our IP addresses because literally there are like fraudsters out there trying to get into our IP addresses. And so it's just a continual barrage from the outside. And because I think the way that we've allowed our world to be constructed around us, which isn't natural. You see, rhythm follows, everybody goes by this concept that all of the changes that we're experiencing is normal, right? Have you watched nature? How much does nature change? Yeah, nature changes. There is change. Change is a part of nature. But does nature change to the point where a red flower is going to be blue within a decade? And after 3 decades, it's become a crawling bug. And after 5 decades, that crawling bug has got fur and it's got a name and it carries a clipboard. The nature doesn't change that fast. We've been cajoled into believing that the fast-paced changes in the world are just happening, that they're not being driven by whoever educates our children to change the way our children think from generation to generation, that they're not being driven by those that change the way words are spelt, those that re-edit the Bible, and the re-edits of books, change a few small words here to change the narrative, the, change the way we dress because of fashion and because of money, because obviously, you know, if you want to be a fashion designer and you want to be successful, the big corporations are going to decide whether you're successful or not, right? And it's the same for science. If you want to get investment, if you want to get a tenor or whatever, the big corporations have got to sponsor you to do science. And if you want to be a politician, right, you got to be sponsored by the big corporations. And so when we look at it, we're living in a corporate autocracy where so much of our world is being manipulated and controlled by these boardrooms and think tanks. And we don't realize that the changes that are being instituted aren't necessarily just organic, natural changes. For example, do you think this implementation of critical race theory is going to change the next generation, the way they behave?
Um, well, I think it's been since its inception, decades ago. It's definitely been um, changing and shaping
That's just one example.
fundamentally how males and females see each other, and how they think about their relationships, and how to live and operate together. But it does seem that within, I don't know, maybe the last decade or so, there's been there was this extreme ramping up of critical race theory, to the point where you have young, very very young children being influenced by um, the media, and and people around them, and even their sworn guardians, to fundamentally change their bodies, both physically and chemically. Sometimes irreparably, which is, in my opinion, extremely tragic. Um, yeah, to go back to the the way that nature changes, and I want to make a point here that we're not separate from nature. Our intellects will never will never separate us from whatever nature is, and nature is not to be pinned down by a word that we made up. Um, when it's my experience is that when nature changes suddenly, it's extremely violent, and um, you could die because just several weeks ago there was this storm that came through here, an unprecedented storm, and very high winds, and just probably thousands of trees fell over. And I'm talking about big trees, massive trees. tall trees. Because over here, the way that the environment is, there's a lot of moisture, and it's very temperate, and so trees grow very tall and very quickly. And so there's a lot of big ones around here, and a lot of them fell over. A lot of branches went flying everywhere and stuff like this. So there was this sudden change. The nature suddenly changed, and it was just chaos. And some people lost their lives, and houses and cars and all sorts of things were crushed. But I think when us humans attempt to meddle and change nature suddenly, that also has a cascade can have a cascading negative effect on our our experience of living. What do you got here? Africa, what does it say there? Africa helps to shoot down solar geoengineering proposal. Yeah.
Global weather engineering has been happening for the past decade in a big way, and a lot
Yeah.
of African states are standing against it. So, why you say unprecedented storms? I think when you play with the weather, you trigger something unprecedented. No, you
Yeah,
want
and
to
I think yeah, I think that there are profound technological systems at play on the planet that are utilized to change weather systems. The scope of it, I think, is so big that you that it's hard to comprehend. And I'm talking about things like turning the atmosphere into a lens to heat up certain areas. And I'm talking about gargantuan areas of the earth to play around with the high and low pressure areas to maybe force a certain system one way or the other to bring rain to one area to bring drought to another. Um, when you but That's all conjecture because I really can't point to one certain thing. Um, but the other point I want to make about this is that, and I was thinking about that experience you had at the deep lake, as I like to call it, the deep water with the what you call the datura seeds or something like that. You got a collection of these seeds, right? And
technically malpota, but yeah,
okay, uh, and I love that. I really love that story, because there are these rhythms of nature that will never end, um, and that will never end and are always available to us, no matter what is happening. You know, and that with the plant world, um, there's so much food and medicine there that's available to us. Uh, to to nourish us, to heal our ailments, to um, or to cause sickness and death, or to give us um, rapturous and ecstatic psychotropic experiences. So let me make oh gosh, my notes are my notes are not with me. My notepads are not with me. I have this one piece of paper here. Um, that I'll try to. So I made this little drawing right here. This one, and it's like this can be considered a sphere of awareness, right? This is the um the corporate technocracy, right? This is all our social media. This is our money. This is war. This is our transportation systems. All this sort of stuff, and we can get stuck bouncing around inside of it every day for the rest of our lives, just stuck there. This is the blue light from our computer screens. This is the blue light from my computer that I'm looking at right now. And this is nature as well. Nature is this infinite thing that's all around us, but we can get focused right here. And this is the scientists who are doing the corporate bidding, and these are the politicians, and the actors, and the TikTokers and all that kind of shit, right? But this right here is not really a barrier. It's an illusion, and you can bump up against it, and you can push beyond it, and then you can go way beyond it if you want. However, but beyond this, it's like now you're in a cave, you're eating rice, and you're drinking water from the creek, right, and communing with the animals. And I'm not really sure what's beyond that. These are the borderlands. But in this life, if you really want to, find out and experience how things really work, this is where you want to go. You don't have to live here necessarily, but you can go there, and you can cross beyond, and you can go even beyond. It just depends on really, how you want to live and how far you want to push it. Um, but that border is where, like, there's portals to that border. Like we were talking about the lingam structures. That seems like a portal. You know, your the deep lake, the deep water. That's a portal. Um, the meetings. These babas that you come in contact with. They seem like portals. Um, so to weave it back to India there. I want you to keep telling me about that, your travels there.
Well, um, some part of me went to India to get back to real nature, not the man made version of nature,
Hmm.
not the man reconstruction of nature, not the man mental idea of nature, just back to nature. And so that was, I suppose, something that was drawing me to India. There's a wild element to India. There are a lot of jungles. There's a lot of wilderness. There's a lot of nature, deserts, jungles, Himalaya, and I suppose what drew me there fundamentally was, and this is something people don't know. We've been brainwashed into like lies about what shamanism is by people that have written books to make money.
Hmm.
And so there's this narrative that was pushed by this historian that obviously didn't study India, never spoke Sanskrit, never read Sanskrit, never went to India, didn't really know anything about India, who said one day that the word Shraman doesn't come from India. It's got nothing to do. It's just a coincidence that there's a word in a scroll which is 2,800 years old, where the word Shramana is written, and it means a human being that leaves society to live in the wilderness, use their drum to meditate, chanting the sacred chants, the Shraman, in order to enter into a trance and have face to face with the deities, the guides, the ancestors, the devas, and the devis. And then having had this experience, be able to channel these forces and beings to help society, to guide them and to produce healing for them and to help them to get what they need. And so this guy just decided that that's not a shaman, right? Someone who lives in the wilderness, plays a drum, meditates, chants, goes into a trance, travels out of their body, has connections with the guides. That's just a coincidence that that word sounds the same. It's a linguistic coincidence. The word shaman actually comes from Siberia, and it's only 400 years old. So we disregard the 2,800-year-old word because it's coincidence, irrelevant. Shaman doesn't come from there. It comes from this place in Siberia where there was a migration from India of the shaman because all of the Indo-Europeans basically migrated across Europe. And this is a slow migration, like 1,000 years, 2,000 years, right? And during this migration, the Indo-European racial group became what it is, and the languages of Europe became what it is due to the Sanskrit influence and the influence of the Anapan languages, the Farsi, and the languages of Persia, as they all moved across, and China, and the Mongolese. And certain of the Mongolese tribes settled in Eastern Russia. And that place is where um the why can't I think of their name now? What's that tribe called? Anyway, that tribe is where the word shaman was used. But obviously, the tribes got small and the population got small. And so they didn't have the lore with them, right? They were disconnected from their tribal homeland due to movement. And so shamanism stayed alive and thriving in the Himalayas because there were lots of people and not anybody could be a shaman. But then what they had problems with was small populations and they didn't have enough gifted people. So they were like, oh, well, you don't have the abilities to be a shaman, but there is this mushroom that can temporarily give you the abilities to be a shaman. And you just use that to do the work. And so it was like somebody who can't walk, but they're given a stick, and with the stick, they can walk fine. And now they're teaching everybody else to walk with a stick. And now everybody's walking around with sticks. Like you don't need the stick to walk. You see what I'm saying? But there was a narrative sold to us that shamanism is connected to substance use, whereas it's actually a fallacy. And if you go to the Himalayas, you go to the core of where shamanism has been alive and kicking for thousands. I mean, there's a reference to in the Rig Vedas of the word Shraman and Shramana and what it means. And Ayurveda came from it. What we call Ayurveda came from this. So, and that's just a reference to something which was old, thousands of years old in that book. So we've got like a legacy of 5, 10, 15, who knows how many thousands of years of shamanism in the Himalayas. In Nepal, you'll see it as well. I came across it in Nepal extensively. So we've been sold this idea of shamanism, which is different. And when I got to India and I experienced it, I noticed it was all about the wild. It was all about not trying to interfere with nature, but trying to find our place in nature. And so this is really what India became for me, was that finding my own place within nature. And I had always not liked in the West the way the attitudes towards nature were people's, right? Like today, I'll give you an example. I'm walking through the penguin sanctuary and I see a group of ladies and they're like, oh gosh, will it bite me? They're scared to walk on the path because there's a little dassy on the path. These cute little things. Okay, yeah, they've got canines like that, but they're cute little things. They don't want to hurt you. And these people immediately, they're not used to nature. They're like, oh, will it bite me? Like, and I had to explain to her to say, no, of course it won't bite you. Just walk past it. And so they were like, oh, okay. And they walked past it and they were fine. But that mindset of nature is dangerous. You need to be afraid of anything that's wild because wild animals are dangerous, has been programmed into our brains to such an extent that we don't mind when here where I live, 100 to 150 tons of octopus are removed from my beaches every year. And because of it, there are no more seals. Today we saw a seal. It was so beautiful. My little boy wanted to go to it. And it was on the rocks. We didn't have costumes. We'd have to swim across to the rocks to go to the seal. I said to him, damn, man, you'll get your chance, bro. I'll get you. We'll sit down with a seal and we'll chill with one day. But they're so rare these days. There used to be so many seals. I used to surf with them all the time. They used to come and play with us in the water. And so all the octopus get taken out of the sea. And it's like Australian companies selling them to Japan. And so the seals aren't there. Now the sharks don't have seals to eat. And now the fish that would feed off the leftovers of the sharks eating seals aren't there. And so now the penguins are leaving. So now we've got a problem with there's hardly any penguins here at my penguin sanctuary. And it's just sad to watch. And this is in India, you've got so vast a piece of wilderness that much of it is still intact, if that makes sense. And so this was really what I fell in love with, and this was what drew me. And I spent time with this Agora guy, but the more I was in the wild, the more I wanted to be in nature. And that became for me my bhakti, nature, connecting with animals, which is why I swam out into sea to swim with the ochre. Yeah, I didn't realize how big they were. They were far out to sea.
I threw up a picture on our Telegram. If you want to show it real quick, of a seal that I took a picture of in California, or off the coast of California. You're muted. But yeah, I had this yeah, you see it?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get it.
Yeah. I had this I was in when I was in college, I went to college in California there, around Santa Barbara. And this one evening I was hanging out with classmates on the beach there, and I took a surfboard. Um, I just sat on it. I didn't really know how to surf, but I swam out into the ocean there a little ways because the sun was setting. It was just really nice. And I'm watching the sunset. Oh yeah, there it is. I'm watching the sunset, and out of the corner of my eye, out of the corner of my eye, I see this black shape, this black dome shape, just rise from the ocean like this, just real slowly. And there was this moment where my heart went boom, boom, because you're like, whoa, what is that? And I look, and it's a seal. This is black eyes. He just rose out of the ocean. It was so funny now that I think about it, and just like looked at me, and then just went back under the ocean. He just popped up to take a look at me and then went back down. It was so funny. And I did a lot of. So I took that picture. I was diving. I did a lot of diving in college, and I remember the very first time I went out on a boat. I had all my scuba gear and I went under there. I think I was with a group, but it was the first. I remember the first time I saw seals underwater. Um, I I was I thought it was so funny. I remember I spit my regulator out because I was laughing because I have all this shit on me, and I'm not very flexible. I can't, I can only go certain ways, and I gotta inflate and deflate in the buoyancy vest. But these seals are just just totally at home, just flying around, just playing around. I thought, and here I am, I'm like, where are you? I just thought it was so funny, and I was just thinking that from their perspective, we must look like these cripples underwater. uh, and when I took that picture, I remember they would, so sometimes what kind of they, I think they're sea lions. That might have been a sea lion. But sometimes they'll dive bomb you and they'll like show you their teeth. I think that's what he was doing. I got another picture, but there's this boundary where they won't come they'll stop at a certain distance, and they come in groups. I remember I was on the surface. I was messing with my camera, and I could see a big group of seals. They're doing this on the surface, coming over to me, and I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." They'll come over and they surround you, but they won't come within a certain distance. And they'll hang upside down. Um, so they'll be like this, and the water will be their bellies will be towards the surface, and they'll just be kind of like looking around at you, and then they'll fly off. But anyways, there are a lot of good memories of seals. They're hilarious.
They're very curious animals. I think that picture you showed me, I don't believe he was threatening you. I believe he was just curious.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
He's just obviously like letting you know, keep your distance. I'm just coming to check you out,
Yeah,
basically. You don't
yeah.
have to touch me.
Yeah, but I did once have a giant sea lion, like a big sea lion, dive bomb me because right in front of me, because I don't know, I was like looking at something, and all of a sudden it was just black right in front of me, and there was this whooshing, and I was like, whoa. And this enormous sea lion just right in front of me, like literally like a foot in front of my face, and I was like, hi. I see you, okay. That was funny.
Yeah. So I think like you say, these creatures are interesting, and I noticed that part of me is connected to all of these creatures.
Hmm.
And so what we call the guides, so this is very interesting. People like to think of guides as these spirits out there,
Yeah.
right? When my experience of it is much more integral. It's sort of like we think of ourselves as being separate from each other because of our free will, which we are to an extent, in as much as each ant is separate to each other ant and freely goes about its own business.
Yeah.
But when you look at them from macrocosmic perspective, you recognize and realize that these ants are operating with a group mind.
Hmm.
And then you go, well, that's interesting. And when you spend time in nature, you notice this group mind exists within all creatures: birds, elephants, buffaloes and wildebeest, wild stampedes, animals, bulls. And you start noticing there's something going on in nature, and humans, you then observe it in humans too. Like when you've been in the wild for a long time and you come back from the wild, you notice, hey, the humans have got this thing going on too that the animals have got. And then you notice that we've got these connections with animals. And so that that animal spirit that we're connecting with is within us. There's a part of us that's actually our DNA, which is resonating at a particular frequency. And that animal group mind spirit is resonating at a particular frequency. And so there's that frequency that within a part of yourself that's at that tone that you can touch and trigger that DNA code within yourself to have that experience, but then you're actually telepathically connected with all of those creatures, which is an interesting concept. And so people have this idea that you connect to the guides and it's an abstract thing that happens out there in a little speech bubble and separate to the world. No, it's happening in the world with real creatures
Yeah.
in a sense, and even in other worlds with creatures that aren't in this world, which is really interesting.
Hmm.
And so this is what I started to become more and more aware of when I was in Uttaranchal. I'd become very aware of it in India years before, and then in Sri Lanka earlier, and um, even I'd become aware of it when I was in Nepal in 1999 when I was meditating, and I was meditating naked for sunset, and the cloud of mosquitoes came to me, and literally a cloud, man. Like it was getting dark, but not dark, but the sky was changing color, and this big dark cloud came towards me, and it sort of covered me, and I was the acoustics. I could hear thousands of mosquitoes. And I opened my eyes a crack and I was like, you are kidding me. What the hell is this? And so I decided, well, yeah, I'm not going to let it get to me. So I went into a deep space and I noticed there was a being with me. I was like, what is this? I was, oh, right. You're all like connected to a bigger thing. I get this. You're all plugged in. This is your like subconscious, your unconscious, collective unconscious. And so I started connecting with this being, and they were all biting me. They were all tasting my blood. And I got really sick. Um, they basically feasted me. And I was counting like hundreds of bites on one arm and like another arm and leg. And I was like, I must have about 800 bites. And then I had this terrible fever and I got ill. And I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to fast. I got myself a jar of honey, jar of local raw honey. And I was like, I'm going to fast. I'm not going to eat anything. I'm going to drink water. I'm going to have like a little spoon of honey in the morning. That's all I want to have. And I did that for like a long time and sweated out whatever the poison was. But then, ever since then, I've got a relationship with mosquitoes. So when the mosquitoes come and bite me, they're like, okay, you bit me, okay. But it doesn't swell up. It doesn't become a bump. It's not like a big deal. Um, and so we live in this disconnected state from nature. We don't realize that like nature's part of us.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, I think that's a good place to stop. And um, I really appreciate you talking to me today and all the stories that you've shared. Hopefully our audiences got some knowledge and some lore out of that. Um, but yeah, let me. Is there anything else you want to share before we go?
Thank you, dear brother,
Yeah,
for this. It's been an honor as always and lovely. And 1 hour and 8 minutes. Interesting
perfect.
numbers. And big love, man.
Yeah,
I
you
hope you
too.
have a great week.
Yep.
Thank you all for joining us and sending you all so much love and blessings and peace and honor and respect. Until next time. Om.